Hey everybody, what up? Scuff D here, and trying to get off one last video before I go to bed. Um, it's late, my time, 11:50. So I figured we'd talk about poison mechanics. So that's what we're gonna go ahead and talk about today, or this little burp here. This is again a beginner video, a recruit video. I don't believe poison is a mechanic that's necessarily discussed in the tutorial. So if you're new to the game and you're kind of wondering about it or how does it work, we'll talk about that. Now I've already went ahead, saved a little bit of the time in building a deck loaded up with cards that are filled with poison. Now as you'll note, I'm using the Death Guard. Surprisingly, or not surprisingly so, the Death Guard are very heavy, make the most use out of the poison mechanic. However, there are cards outside of the faction that have poison. Not too many. There's a demon, Mark of Chaos, that gives a Mark of Nurgle, can bestow poison upon any troop. So just take a look at there. You've got where are they at? These guys here, the Battleflies, have got poison. And gosh, I'll be honest with you, I think that's kind of it. I mean, surprisingly, Father Decay does not, but he has a pretty good ability. So, I mean, it's not an exclusive mechanic, but it's the Death Guard specialty. What it does, and it's been this way since the launch of the game, so it's not anything has changed or been revamped. But basically, what poison does is a unit that is poisoned dies at the end of the controlling player's turn, or next turn rather. So it's like a slow death. So we'll go in here. We'll just go ahead and play the AI here, and we should see several poison interactions, so you kind of get a good idea. Or maybe not if we're playing Karn. Well, we've got... Now, you'll note that I'm running Mortarion. He's a legendary Primarch. It's going to be a little bit hard for a newer player to have. There was a sale a couple weeks ago where Mortarion was on sale. You could actually buy him with way better art. I already had him. I just couldn't say yes, I'm going to buy this guy, even though the artwork is awesome. If you've seen the alternate art or you run across it, it's good, but the ability remains the same. What Mortarion's ability is, though, this will help me out actually in this game, is first off, for 2, he can stun an enemy or remove stun and poison from a friendly troop, which is great in the mirror match, big time. And then just being able to stun. So I'm going to be able to stun Karn mostly through this entire game, which will allow me to kind of build up my turn. And, you can kind of see it. However, Poison and Mortarion together, Phosphex Bomb poisons, but I think those cards wouldn't last if I threw them out there. So let's just go ahead and do the slow stun. We'll draw this out. But poison works with Mortarion very much so, probably more than the other Death Guard, because he can poison a troop and then stun it. So not only can the opponent not act with it on their turn, but then they're going to lose that troop, and there's nothing they can do about it. So let's see here. So we've got 4 energy left. I can stun the Berserkers. I can stun Karn. And actually what I'm going to go ahead and do here, I'm still probably going to eat it from the Berserkers, but to kind of show you what poison does, let's poison them. So you get that neat little animation. Now they're poisoned. Now that doesn't do anything to their stats. They can still act on their turn. The difference is instead of at the end of his turn him still having a 4 attack unit, he's going to lose that unit regardless of the fact. And that's kind of a bonus for me. That buys you additional time. Obviously, if I had 5 energy instead of 4, I could have stunned the berserker, so not only would he not be able to attack with them, but he would also lose them. It's a slow death. It doesn't reduce the stats, and there you go, and then they're gone. But it's a very good death, if that makes sense. Let's go ahead. Let's heal up for now. I've got chem munition. If my vehicle lives long enough, maybe I can throw that on that just to show you a little bit more poison. World Eaters, Karn, bot decks. I mean, it's going to go through things fast, so it's going to be kind of hard to really highlight it. Poison works best, in all honesty. Besides, if you can't stun a troop against immobile troops like fortifications, bunkers, buildings, or things with extremely high health, because you're going to take some damage. That's a given. However, if you're able to, let's just stun Karn. Let's lock the board down here. However, if you are able to eat, let's say you've got a 5/7. You've got a 5/7 character that's going to attack you, but you poison it. You're only going to take that 5 damage one time, and then that troop is gone, and you won't ever have to deal with it again, as opposed to taking 5, and now it's got 5 health remaining, and you still have to figure out a way to deal with it, and then you have to deal with it on the next turn and the next turn. So it's kind of like a finite way. And here's a perfect example of this combination. So we're going to poison this thing, and poison does not discriminate. It doesn't matter if it's a vehicle, it doesn't matter if it's a building. You can just kind of imagine the toxins that the World Eaters have at their disposal. So that big old 7/7 is going to be completely worthless, and it's going to die at the end of his next turn, and it just is going to clear the way for things. If they've got a building or a frontline troop that they're not planning on moving, you poison that thing and they don't have a choice. They're going to lose that at the end of their turn, and it's game over. There you go. As a powerful mechanic, let's see, can I just wrap this game up here really quick? Not quite. Not quite. That's okay. We'll buy ourselves some time. As a powerful mechanic, I don't think poison really is. It's kind of a slow. Jesus, it's the earliest predecessor for a control deck or control mechanic that existed in the game. Stun is more reliable. Direct damage is more reliable. Poison's not bad. Again, it has definitely some ways to deal with things. We'll just go ahead and end this game here. You've seen poison a couple times. There's no variation to it. That's just how it works. So you've seen what it does. It's slow though. If you are a player who likes that, very slow, methodical, or you're a big fan of the Death Guard, you can look into it. There's quite a few cards that poison, but none of them do it any differently. They simply apply the poison status, and then poison as that effect takes over. Now, how do you deal with poison? There are several cards, not too many, but there are several cards that deal with poison. A couple of them actually are in the Death Guard. Now, I can't recall correctly. I don't think Shield Up actually does. When it says fully heal, I think fully heal means just healing health. I don't think it actually heals poison damage. However, by the way, I like this new. Oh, there you go. The Blessing of Nurgle gives poisonous as well, so I didn't include that in there, but I should have. You've got Death Cloud, which poisons all troops, which includes your own troops. These guys here, which I play, Purity of Will, they heal too, and they remove poison from your units. So there's one way to do that. That's all your units, which is great if you play them after a Death Cloud, although that's a 9 energy move. You've also got Mortarian's ability. As we saw, there's one way to remove poison, although if you don't have a legendary Primarch, then yeah, you're going to want to look for some other options. You've got Purity of Will. You've got a Mechanicum card. Where are they at down here? I could be wrong. I don't know if they remove poison. Chimu? Yes. It's also another vehicle here. This one heals 2 and removes poison from adjacent units. So as a neutral card, you'll notice that it's a little bit more expensive, and the effect is not across the board. It's only on adjacent units. It's also a common as opposed to a rare. And then, that's really it as far as removing poison. Except for good old sabotage. Now you might think jam. Well, jam again cancels all abilities and active effects. Poison is an active effect. So if you have sabotage as an early player, again, it's always a great card to include. It's even as a seasoned player. Sabotage sees play because it's useful. It's 1 energy. It answers a lot of things. The only thing it doesn't answer is stealth. If you are poisoned and stunned, you sabotage that unit, they'll lose whatever stat boosts or other abilities that they have. However, they won't be poisoned and they won't be stunned. It removes that, and now you've got a unit that you can actually do something with. That's really good, especially if you're playing against, like, let's say a Mortarion or an Alpha Legion, and they've stunned or poisoned your big guy that you were banking on using your next turn. Well, you might not have whatever passive ability that they've got, but if they're an 8/8, Death Shroud, you won't be able to have them recoup over the loss of it. After they're destroyed, they'll lose that backlash ability, but they'll still be an 8/8 that can actually do an action on their turn. So that is another way to deal with poison, and that's kind of it. There's not a lot to counter it, but on the other hand, it's also not a very fast, very active. I mean, you still have the ability, if your troops are poisoned, unless they're stunned as well, you can still do whatever it is that you want to do with them. And 90% of the time, it's worthwhile at that point, regardless of even if they're a 1/4 front line, they're going to die at the end of your turn. You might as well make the most of it and have them attack something. It's unfortunate. It would almost be ridiculous if poison was something that could be passed from one troop to the other, like a poison troop can poison another troop, and now that troop can poison the next troop. There are those who attack, such as not the Plague Marine, the Plague Elite has got poisonous built in, but that's specific to Nurgle, and again, that's not like a contagion effect necessarily. But then that would be probably too rampant at that point in time, especially if you had a couple different units poisoned. Like, there wouldn't be any troops on the board. That would not be a good idea. As cool as it would be to see, not a good idea. So, anyways, that's the poison mechanic. I mean, there's not a lot to talk about it, but that's how it works. And there's a couple ideas in terms of how you're facing it and how you fare against it. It shouldn't be overly problematic to you because it's not going to really upset your playstyle terribly. If you see some units who can poison, such as the Plague Elite or these guys here, the Executors, then you may want to consider, depending on what your strategy is in your deck, you may want to consider making those targets and getting rid of them as quickly as possible, or simply giving them targets or frontline troops that they're going to have to chew up that you're expecting to lose anyways. And okay, well, they buy you that turn and you can still act. You can also, I guess, actually, now that I think about it, I mean, this is really thinking semi outside the box, but if you really had to, you could also use Ambassador Melgator, which again, this is a legendary card, so not everybody has access to this. But you could use Ambassador Melgator to return a poison card to your hand. And then when you redeploy them, obviously they'll be back restored. They won't be poisoned. They'll be as if they were a new copy of that card. That's really kind of specific on if it's a clutch card that you need to keep for whatever purpose. But that's just kind of thinking outside the box there. Other than that, yeah, I don't have much more to say. I hope that was a little bit helpful. It's really basic. Again, it's one of the four launch legions, if it were, or as it were. Um, it's not entirely exclusive to Death Guard, but it is kind of their niche. So I mean, the next time we'll take a look at probably the Relentless mechanic, which is it's in several different factions. It's pretty powerful, but that's a different mechanic, and that's not necessarily again something that's covered in your general tutorial. So. Anyways, I hope this was useful for you. If you're a new player, you know some other new players, please feel free to uh, forward out the video, get people looking. We have a good community of players who are putting up content, who have got experience, who are showing gameplay, event play, deck tactics. There's a lot out there already. And so dive deep, dive deep, and if you got questions, hopefully this provides answers. If not, there's other videos out there. You can take a look at my Death Guard card by card video. It's a little bit outdated because there's been some changes to some of the Death Guard cards. But overall, for the most part, it's a good review in terms of what the card pool has to offer. Um, yeah, that's it. So, anyways, that's it. I'm midnight, probably about this time. Yes, 12:06. I'm tired. I'm going to bed. Thanks for staying up with me, and keep playing Legions.